Mm.
I had pushed for us to disclose our calendars. I had a newsletter when others didn't have it. We involved as many residents as we could in decision making. That's to me what local government's about.
So you think the Democratic Party cares about Black people? Believe it or not, Rex, I think that tweet is part of the problem. Do you feel like we could have addressed this homeless issue much sooner? You have to speak a word, make it a good one.
Okay, let's go.
Welcome back to The Word. I'm Jackie Rae. I am continuing our election coverage. I'm excited because we have a vet on our stage today, and I'm excited to get to know more about her.
Okay.
It's so fun to learn about all of these candidates that are running, but today I have Gerrie Schipske on the show. Now, listen, you guys, she has 20 years of political experience. She started serving as the Long Beach City College trustee from 1992 to 1996. I know a lot of my listeners weren't even born then. I was here though.
Oh,
So
stop.
I was born.
You've done your homework.
I have. She ran for Congress in 2000 and was elected to city council in 2006. So when I say we have a vet, I mean we have a vet. So please welcome Gerrie Schipske to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
I
you, Jackie.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
So you have such a broad political background. Just tell me, when did you decide, hey, you're an attorney as well. Let me kind of throw my hat in the ring of politics.
Actually, this is kind of a funny story. When I was 10 years old, my dad put us in his car and he drove us up to LAX because at that time there's no security, whatever. And we pulled and parked and got out and we waited 3 hours for John Kennedy to come into the airport and to greet everybody. So we did, and our family actually wound up on the front page of every newspaper, including the Press Telegram and other places, because we were right up in front. And then we went over to the Biltmore Hotel, and I was 10. I got to meet all these elected officials, and I didn't quite know what that meant, but my mom had been registering voters at our house and at church, and we also were a polling place during elections, and she had coffees for candidates, and so I just that was a natural thing. And then as I got older, I was elected student body president of my high school, and I just liked being involved like that. And so then when I became an adult, I got involved in politics and then said, why not? Why not get out there and do it myself?
So I'm listening to your background, and especially with your mom making sure people are registered to vote. As a journalist, as I'm going out and I'm talking to people, I hear time and time again, you know what, I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter. How do you feel about that?
That's terrible. One of the things that I'm trying to push is a clean up Long Beach government plan, because I do hear this myself. People don't think that their opinion matters and that what matters is political money. And we have got to set that straight, especially on local level. We may not be able to control the higher levels of government, but local level touches every part of our lives. And we need to make it clean and ethical and open, because otherwise we're losing the trust of people and they don't vote. So those that do vote are those that get encouraged, through I think the special interest to get out there and do their bidding. So this is critical. And this has always been very important to me. When I was on city council before, President Obama and Vice President Biden honored me at the White House as one of only 7 champions of change for open government, because I had pushed for us to disclose our calendars. I had a newsletter when others didn't have it. We involved as many residents as we could in decision making. That's to me what local government's about. And I want to get that back going again, because I think Long Beach is in dire need of it. Or we're going to lose the electorate. That we're just simply going to lose it, and it's going to be a very narrow, focused election process, and that's bad for democracy.
I agree with that so much. But sometimes I think it's such a big mountain to climb. So how can one person really be that change for an entire government system?
I think you can encourage the change and if you have a voice and a focus, I think people listen to that. We don't have that. I don't hear discussions. I'm talking to people out here in the 4th Council District, and many of them know me because it used to be the 5th District. That's what they say to me. They go, "We want you back because we want somebody to stand up, ask the questions, and just make points about things that we can't do as individuals." When you get that, then people come along with it.
Right.
They do. But there's no one doing that, so it's like people's lives are very busy and they need to move on and do other things. And so I think one person can make a difference, but you have to include people to make that difference. And that's what I tried to do when I was on council before, and I want to do it again.
So I'm already loving this conversation because I have a saying that when people make politics their business, it becomes difficult to keep people at the forefront of their politics because now it's a business, right? But how do you manage that? Because again, with the 20 years background, obviously you've been in the business of politics for a while.
Right,
How do
right.
you navigate the business of politics and still keep people at the forefront?
Well, I think especially in local government, you keep it nonpartisan.
Mm,
I sometimes, somebody will walk up to me and they go, "I don't know what party you are, but I like how you stand up for people." And I go, party shouldn't matter in local politics because what we're dealing with are really nonpartisan issues. And I think that's got to be at the forefront, especially for local government. The other thing is, quite honestly, we got to get money out of politics and we can do it locally. One of my biggest gripes in the last couple of years is when the city council changed the Long Beach Campaign Finance Act, which might give you some background. It was voted on by the voters in the 90s, and it was because people were tired of seeing their elected officials spend all the time raising money. And they said, we got to stop this. So what they did is it's part of our charter now. They restrict it so you can only raise money a year before the election. And we didn't have office holder accounts at the time, but you couldn't spend office holder money on political campaigns.
hmm,
Well, guess what the city council did a couple of years ago? They took the prohibition off about office holder accounts. You now can raise money 24/7 and put it in your office holder account, and you can spend it on political campaigns. No other city allows that in California.
hmm,
Nobody does. The other thing is that what that means is someone who is running against an incumbent, um, I would have to wait a year before the election to be able to start fundraising. My opponent
mm,
can raise money all the time off the office holder account. And that's wrong. It destroyed. And I actually, at the beginning of this campaign, filed a complaint with the Ethics Commission because it does violate the Long Beach Campaign Finance Reform Act. And
mhm,
they've got to take off that thing about the office holder accounts. The other thing the council did is they raised the amounts you could raise for your office holder account. You can take in an individual contribution. I believe it's 700, and city council can only raise 500 during the campaign.
mm,
You can then raise for 4 years. City council members can raise, I believe it's $30,000, and so for 4 years, that's $120,000
mm,
that you couldn't raise before, and the mayor has a higher limit. So that's wrong. And that sets it up so if I'm fundraising all the time, all the special interests can come and say, "Hey, Jared, here's some money. It's for
mm,
your office holder account, but we know you can use it politically." So we have got to stop that. We also have to stop taking money from people who have contracts with the city, and that would include organized labor. It sets up a conflict of interest, and it sends the wrong message to the voters that you're making a decision based upon the best interest of the city and
right.
not the interest of the people who are funding your campaigns. So we've got to do something about that locally.
It sounds like it would even make it hard for a newcomer to get in there
It
because
is. Oh, it
okay.
is. It
Mhm.
is. It is. And the advantage I have is because people know me, because I've been here. I Half of the 4th district really is the 5th district. I
Mhm.
have an advantage like an incumbent does. But for somebody just out of the blue to step up and run, it is near impossible
Mhm.
because you've got to be able to have the money. If you don't have the name recognition, you have to have the money. And so it is near impossible. And when you
Mhm.
look at, that's why, I've been pushing a clean campaign where I say, I'm not taking a cent from anyone that has an interest business with the city of Long Beach or a collective bargaining agreement, because I want to send the message. I'm neutral on that, but my interests are for the residents of the city and not the special interests. Because if we don't push in that direction, people get turned off. They don't want to vote. And that's,
Right.
I'm on Nextdoor, and I actually have a pretty good following, but I every once in a while get somebody on there who'll say, well, she's pushing the special interest of the police and fire unions. And I said, well, I didn't go after the endorsement. They didn't endorse me. I don't do it that way. We're not doing it that way in this campaign. We've got to talk about honestly how we can make sure we represent the people and not the special interest.
So let's talk about a little bit about the police department, because I know you have some thoughts on that as well. How do
Mhm.
you feel about police reform, and where would police reform even start?
Well, I think we need to figure out a better way to do a police, the police complaint commission. It should not
Mm,
be based in the city manager's office. It should be independent, because otherwise it's not. And otherwise, that is kind of, all right, well, we'll look at this. If the city manager can overturn the decision of the police complaint commission, then there's no independent. I'd like to see us have an office of inspector general that other cities have. That person would be independent, and that person would have a subpoena power, also investigative power, so that person can truly come up with an independent decision. We need that independence. We don't have that.
mhm,
um, I would say the other thing about the police department, I think the people who work in the police department are good people. They are good people. This is a tough job. I wouldn't want it, and I think most people wouldn't want it either. But that doesn't mean that they can't be held accountable. And I think that's what we've got to figure out. How do we structure some capability in the city to hold them accountable?
mhm.
And I don't think we have it. And I think we need to include the community in helping make that decision so that we can come up with the best way to have an independent oversight of the police department.
I think that touched on a good point, because when people hear, "Oh, you're pro police," they automatically assume you want them to just run amok,
Oh God,
and
no.
that is not the case. So
That's
I'm
not the
very
case.
glad that you were
That's
very.
not the case. I am pro making our neighborhoods and parks safe for people,
Mhm,
because to me that's the number one priority of local government. But that doesn't mean you don't do it in a way that's lawful and ethical, and in a way that understands and supports the community. We've got to have those elements as part of that. Otherwise, the community loses trust in law enforcement, and we need to work as partners with law
mhm,
enforcement and with our fire department, who is also having some great difficulties as well. But that doesn't mean you just say, okay, they can do whatever they want. Absolutely not.
mhm. Now, with the redistricting, obviously District 4 is a little different now. How much did that play, if any, in your decision to run again?
Oh, total. It
Mm,
was the total decision, because when I looked at the statistics of what they did in terms of, and I think the redistricting was incorrect in the fourth
mm,
district. It's the only district that got the fifth and fourth got cut up the way they did, where you have the fifth running horizontally,
mhm,
and you have this district pulling back in portions of the north of Spring area that should have stayed in the fifth, pulling them down, into this new force. So that was a great deal, because when I look statistically, I represented half of this new fourth district,
mhm.
and so I thought this is important. I know the issues, I know the area, I know what's going on, and so it allows me to hit the ground running. Where if it was configured differently, I might not be able to do that.
So, as a Long Beach native and with your background in politics, what are some of the things that you have just seen on the constant decline as far as our city?
Oh, I think, well, citizen participation,
Right.
and civic engagement. I think that's one of the things I've been doing since I left council, is I've been writing a column for the Beachcomber called City Watch Long Beach. And it's basically to educate people on how government works, because if you don't know how it works, you don't know where to impact it.
Mhm,
And so I think civics education is so much important. And then following through with that, setting up task force that I used to have, and getting people involved in it to make decisions and being real about about that they can make decisions, not, oh, we have this commission and board and they can't make decisions, but we have this commission and board. So we've got to be genuine with what we do. I think the other thing is there's a gross division between the east side of Long Beach and the rest of the city.
Right.
And I have felt that for years. It's just when you talk to people over on this section of town, they don't know what's going on downtown. They don't know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on the west side or North Long Beach. And I've grappled with that before. I don't know how you fix that I'd like to see city council meetings rotate again around the city. Because
Yes.
I think what it does, it focuses for that brief time on that section and lets people know what that section is and who's there and who's involved. I think that device is really going to be downstream going to be very harmful to the city
Mm.
because you've got people with a higher tax base on one side and people not on one side understanding the issues that other parts of the city are facing because they've
Mm-hmm.
never been over there. They don't even know it's there. And so we have to somehow get a community involved. And I have to tell you, one of the things that I was impressed in the mayor's race with was with Rex Richardson's focus on, that's what he focused on. He talked about that constantly. And the other candidates didn't. In
Mm.
fact, they kind of emphasized the division a little bit and said, we're not going to be like those other parts of town. We're going to
Right.
be a city that's, like other areas. So I think we need to work on that. I see that as kind of a decline. I also see that, our infrastructure is just not being addressed the way it is. And we're not focusing enough, I think, on what happened this last week and is going to happen this weekend. And that's the climate change that's
Right.
impacting Long Beach. And what does that mean? Are we prepared for it? Do we have things in place that can make sure that people don't lose their homes? And it's not just down in the shore area. I'm looking at El Dorado Park. It flooded massively
Mm-hmm.
over here as well. So we need to have some realistic discussions. The other thing I'm very concerned about is the city's constant raising taxes. We have the highest sales tax in the area, or one of it. We have a 5% utility users tax that should have gone away a long time ago. And
Mm-hmm.
then they illegally raised water rates, which I got a team of attorneys. We fought and the court said it was illegal. But they look for every venue to be able to raise fees and taxes and people can't afford it. And so
Right.
that's a driver of pushing people out of the city who, on top of the high cost of housing, are not able to meet just basic like utility rates and the sales tax, and that they need to go someplace else. And that's if we don't address that as a city, we are going to continue to lose people out of here.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things to cover as a journalist when I run into people who love the city of Long Beach, they work in the city of Long Beach, but
Yeah,
they can't afford to
they
live
can't
here.
afford it.
And it's going to get worse. I always ask this question, like, what's going to happen to the young people? They're not going to be able to buy a home in this city.
They
And
can't.
so how do we have to be forward thinking in that? Have you put any thought into as to how if young people want to grow up and stay here, they
Yeah.
should be able to do that? How have you given any thought to how that could possibly happen?
Well, we have to create jobs. We
Mm.
have to create meaningful jobs. And one of the things, the city's having a problem right now. I think your publication asked me this question in a questionnaire. They're having a problem recruiting and
Yes.
staffing basic city jobs. Well, they're not alone. And this apparently is a statewide problem with cities. But one of the things that was suggested by Western cities was that we have meaningful apprenticeships in the
Oh.
city, sponsored by the city, to train people to do city jobs, but to educate and train people so that they look to a career within the city of Long Beach. And I think we need to get people income. We need to make sure that they have a way to, have a good paying job with health benefits.
Mhm.
And then we need to start working on how do we make housing affordable. And I think that's the biggest problem facing us. And I don't have a solution to that because the problem is every time the city goes to make a development for affordable housing, they ain't affordable.
Right. I know.
They ain't affordable. So it's kind of like the people who really benefit are the developers. And Long
Right.
Beach did this just 2 years ago. This council waived $240,000 in property taxes a year so they could cut a deal so a developer who built a really high-end building down downtown
Yeah.
could be bought by the state of California and it could become subsidized housing. And then they
Hmm.
gave the guy 5 years. Well, he has to downgrade the places because they were so high end. This is insanity.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, the city of Long Beach, up to 15 years, is going to lose that money, that property tax. We could have taken that property tax, reinvested it for meaningful housing.
Hmm.
So we've got a lot to do, and I don't know the solution, but if we don't start addressing it, you're right, we're going to lose more and more people out of here
Yeah.
who could be valuable to the economy of Long Beach, but because they can't afford to live here, they won't live here and they won't work here.
I watch a lot of political commentary, and I love hearing the dialogue from former politicians. And when they address these types of issues, it seems like just a no-brainer. Like, if we do this, we don't lose this property tax. It seems like it's such a no-brainer that to me, I always have to ask the question, that made sense. Why didn't it happen? Why didn't it happen?
I watched the vote on that, and city management, to its credit, even actually counseled them and said, don't do this.
Mm,
Because one, it sets a precedent. And two, we need the property taxes. It was a political decision. And
mm,
I don't know who had relationships with whom that was involved with the developer, whatever, but somebody pushed politically for that to happen. It didn't happen in a vacuum. And that's got to stop. And one of the things I'd like to see in the Clean Up Government Act is that they would have to go to the voters to ask to waive property taxes of that magnitude
mhm,
so that they kind of get some feedback and it would be a no-brainer. You wouldn't do it. But there was no pushback. And the overlay on all this, though, Jackie, is I think one of the problems we have in the city is, other than the Post, and I'm not saying it because you're with the Post, but we don't have a meaningful journalism effort in this city that takes on city government and
right.
analyzes it and holds it accountable. We don't.
Mhm,
And so people aren't getting any news,
mm.
and if they don't sign on to the Post or they don't see stuff on social media, they don't know what's going on in the city. I would bet you most people don't know that that happened,
Oh, I
simply
bet
because
you're right. Yep.
it's something that they don't see. They don't open a paper in the morning like they used to and go, "Oh my God," and the other part is their lives are so busy with so many other things that
Mhm,
it's hard to keep up with. And at some point, I think they get exasperated and go, "I can't deal with that."
mhm,
But that's why they did it, because nobody's watching.
mhm.
I mean, that could be a theme in local politics. Nobody is watching what's going on. And some really serious things have happened over the last year. That whole thing about allowing office holder accounts to go political,
Mhm.
people should have been outraged about that. But mm, who knew about it? And you have to explain it. And what does that mean? And people, they go on with their lives and go, okay.
You're absolutely right. I'm out in the community a lot, and people will say to me, "Well, what's going on with this in government?" And I say, "You know what? I don't know. Let me ask Jason Ruiz. He's our political reporter.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
ask him
He's
about
good.
it."
He's good.
And people will say to me, "Who is Jason Ruiz?" And I'm like,
Exactly.
"How are you getting your political news if you don't know?"
They're not. They're not. And they get it
Mhm.
through Neighbor Next Door, or they may get it through Facebook, or Instagram. And
Mhm.
other than that, or maybe they watch something on TV. But even that, we don't have coverage on TV
Right.
that really focuses on Long Beach. I tell people the story. The reason why all the TV stations mention the Queen Mary and have the weather cam, that's an FCC requirement that you must mention your localities so many times in a year.
Ah.
That's why they do it. That's the coverage with Long Beach,
Mhm.
and we've got to do something about that. There has to be an aggressive effort by, I think, the city to say, listen, we need to talk about this. Sit down. How do we get the word out to people in the city? Because
Mhm.
I started out with the city of Long Beach as this city citizen participation coordinator because
Hmm.
there had been a blue ribbon task force that was trying to deal with the corruption in Long Beach at the time, and said one of the problems is that we were not engaging citizens and we didn't really have a contact with even the press telegram to get information out. And we still don't. I mean, we worked on it, but then it was kind of like, okay, Prop 13 and other things happened, and life went on for the city. But it's a big, huge problem. It's this lack of communication.
Yeah, I can tell you as a journalist, we get press releases from local government, but they're usually about something that they're saying, "Hey, this is great. Look at me." You know what I mean? So it's not the kind of press release I think you're talking
No,
about.
no, and there's just only so much you can do. I mean, there's only so
Hmm.
much you can cover because you need dedicated coverage to all the activities. One of the things I'd like to see happen in the city, there is an organization, it's a nonprofit called Activote,
Oh
and
yes.
it was yes, and I talked with the founder of it. We had a discussion the other day. They're willing to work with Long Beach to be able to put on the internet a consolidated information program, because right now I tell people, if you want to go do the research, you got to go look at campaign finance reports. You've got to look at the Legistar for the voting records. You got to look at the lobbyist reports. They're willing to put it all on one website so that when you pull up Councilwoman Gerrie Schipske, it would show what I voted on, where I got money from. Did any of the lobbyists come and talk to me? I mean, and I think if people had access to that, I think they'd be more demanding of their elected officials. So I'm hopeful
Absolutely.
that, so yeah, if they would like to work with the city at no charge, because this is their nonprofit focus, is to get information to voters about what their elected officials are doing.
You just get a barrel of good ideas. So I can't wait to hear. So our homeless issue has been an issue
Yeah.
that's been long going. I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. Where would you start to kind of really get this under control?
We need an audit of where the money went.
Mm,
Where did all that money go? In fact, I have a video that I have out on Facebook set to where did all
I
the
saw that.
flowers go?
I saw that.
But where did all the money go? And then we have to analyze what worked and what didn't work, and what worked, let's do it some more and figure out a better way to do things. We don't have any analysis. But that's not just for that. I mean, government has always kind of been that. They throw money at things and
Right.
sounds great, and we have this great thing. I mean, don't start me on community hospital, but that
Mm,
was part of, oh, look at, we're reopening, and and then people forget, it goes away, and then, oh, they closed it. Well, what happened? And
right.
there's no analysis. It's just like, okay, we move on to the next thing. Homelessness is a complex problem, but it starts with, we've got to have a focused, I'm looking right now across, I live across from El Dorado Library. We now have a homeless encampment staring
Mm,
at me. They just came over there today. Um, we need to figure out how we get people out of the parks and off the streets. It's not simple. There's a variety of things. They need to be rehoused. So we need to make sure we have that in place. They need a coordinated plan. Most people of mental health counseling and drug or alcohol rehab. They need job training. They so it's not just let's get them off the street and they're out of the way. One of the things that's happening this year is there's a new law in California called Care Court. And
mm-hmm,
Care Court is going to allow first responders to make an assessment that once they offer this person, you have to offer a true getting off, wherever they are and into housing. If they refuse, you can go to court.
mm,
And the court sets up a conservatorship and helps this person get what they need and get them in place. We need to do that. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, a lot of people don't understand, but Medi-Cal got expanded in California. It's called Cal-AIM. And one of the things that Cal-AIM provides is housing, transitional services. Because what happened is the courts actually looked at this and said these people are all eligible for Medi-Cal. They many of them have health problems. Why aren't you doing something? Because it's a public health problem if they're living in the park
mm-hmm,
and they're homeless and they don't have enough food and they've got a drug problem or whatever. Why aren't you doing something? So now we have the Medi-Cal system that is in place that we can get people into to get them those services. We need to focus on Long Beach and make
mm-hmm,
sure we have a health department. We're one of 3 health departments in California. We can be a Medi-Cal provider. The city would get reimbursed, by the way. It wouldn't cost the city because as a Medi-Cal provider, they can bill and they get reimbursed for their services. We need to have more of a consolidated network that includes the legal system with this care court, and says, listen, we're going to get you, this is not an appropriate place for you to be living.
Right.
And we don't say that. I think we're a little reluctant to say that. I was just looking at the stats yesterday. There's approximately 3,800 homeless people. That's the last count that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to figure out a better way to do things because what we're doing isn't working.
Yeah, I think
And
some of that is changing the mindset too. I did a video. I live in downtown, and I did a video because in the Harvey Milk Park there was this
right,
huge encampment,
right.
and one of the common themes that I received was that is so offensive that you would take a video of them in their home, and that thought process was
Hmm,
jarring to me because I was like, this is not their home.
right.
And thinking that is part of the problem too. I think we have to change the mindset of people a little bit. And I think you nailed it on the head because a person who's been on chronically homeless and have been on the street for 5, 10 years, they're not going to say, yeah, I want to go get housed.
Exactly.
They're not going to do that.
Exactly. Well, and I was looking at other cities, and San Diego has an interesting program, and they just passed an ordinance to be more aggressive about the encampments.
Mm-hmm.
But they do it in a structure, and then they have a safe sleeping place where they've actually set up tents and they can process people. But they all are doing this other thing too about, a coordinated care program because without it, the other stuff doesn't work. Homelessness usually didn't just happen. I was just reading the report from the state, and the state indicates that most people, when you talk to them, they've been homeless for a while.
Right.
And it's a systemic problem. It is not just I don't have a place to live. It's they usually don't have a job, they don't have training, they don't have a support network. They may have a mental health problem. They have a health problem. I mean, it's not isolated. So again,
Mm-hmm.
the answer isn't just to rehouse. The answer is you don't want them once you rehouse them, then to wind up back on the streets because the other systems haven't been taken care of. But first of all, I'd like to go back that I think we need a performance audit and we need to find out what we did and what worked and what didn't work and why are we continuing maybe things that didn't work
Right.
and redirect. If we have to do it on a basis of money, redirect it on a money basis and not because it's a feel good thing kind of.
Mm-hmm.
We've got you can't be compassionate with people if you're incompetent. And you can't be. And so we've got to make sure that we're competent in providing the compassion that we say we're doing through our homeless programs.
Yes, 100%. You touched on this earlier, and I think it was a great point. This rain that we've been having has really exposed the problem that we have in our streets. It's amazing to me that we
Exactly.
live in a city and we're seeing cars that are flooded to the roof. That's insane to me. That's it doesn't make sense. So, and then when you really think about not only that problem being exposed, but I pay very close attention when I'm driving, not just to other drivers, but I don't want to hit a pothole. So
Yes, my ducks in the duck pond also had the
right.
video about there's potholes everywhere. Well, that's
Hmm.
again, where did the money go? Measure A was passed, and that supposedly was for infrastructure fixing.
Hmm.
So where did the money go? Why is it that we're seeing this? The city has, I understand, adopted a new philosophy. They fix not the worst streets, but the streets that are starting to crumble.
Hmm.
You can't do that and catch up ever. You've got to figure out there's got to be a better way. And so I would say again on all these things, where'd the money go? What did we do right? How come it's not working? And putting on, I want to see online an assessment of all needed infrastructure that needs to be repaired. Stop keeping a secret. When I
Hmm.
did the fifth district, we had an infrastructure task force. We walked the entire district 3 times and inventoried. And you don't know this, but after I left council, they destroyed all the records. They destroyed every single one of the inventory records.
Wow.
And I know this because I got subpoenaed to go to a slip and fall case, and we were sitting there, and the person who had hurt herself tripped on a sidewalk and had told her attorney and the city, the reason Gerrie needs to be here is because she walked with me in my neighborhood and we inventoried that. And so I got in there and the city representative said, oh, we don't have any records. She never walked the city. I swear to you. She never walked the city. I said, I actually have copies of some of the records. And I said, where did you get that? No, we've talked to the councilwoman who replaced you. And not only that, but there were no maps. We had maps made up of the entire city that designated where the sidewalks, alleys, and streets were when need to be fixed. All gone, all gone. So I think just full disclosure needs to happen throughout the city. We need to publicly post where the infrastructure needs are and where that Measure A money came, which is your sales tax increase.
Right.
Where did that money go? And why wasn't infrastructure the number one issue that it was promised to be? So it's accountability. And that's the other part of the theme about open government. You have to be transparent and accountable. We don't have accountability because nobody holds people accountable. They just go on to the next thing and go, oh, okay, and so that's a big issue.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this conversation because I hear this narrative all the time, let's hold government accountable, but then that's usually where the sentence stops. It's never,
exactly.
There's plans in place, but you definitely have an idea because of your experience. And I think your experience has really stood out in this conversation. So I just want to take a moment and yield the floor to you, give you the floor and let you tell everyone why they should vote for you.
I think because I can hit the ground running, and I think also because I've proven that my philosophy is to make local government nonpartisan, to make it open and transparent and accountable. We need that so much if we're going to get the people's trust back to get involved. And without them and their involvement, you can't go anywhere as a city. We cannot move forward. We've got some serious problems that need the entire community involvement, and you're not going to get it if they feel that it doesn't matter. So to me, that's kind of the mantra I'm trying to get across, is that we need to be able to have people involved and have it matter for them, that their local government has to be responsive to them and not special interests. Then until we get that cycle going, we're going to still get resistance from people who want to be involved. And also, I would say quickly, we need to train a backbench of potential candidates for office. We need to make sure younger people understand the importance and teach them how to get involved. And one of the things I try to do when I was in office before, I would do again, is I will have internships in the office. If people would like to come in and internship to see how behind the scenes, how local government works, please do it, because you need to understand and get excited that you can make a difference. But if you don't understand the process, you may not want to get involved. And so anything we can do to get young people involved in government, I think, is so important.
Gerrie, I have very much enjoyed this conversation. I always have a great time when I'm on having a conversation and I learn something in the process. I've learned so much from this conversation. I'm very honored that you took the time. I know we had some scheduling issues, but we did it.
Yes, we did it. We persisted.
We did it. Yes, we did. And I thank you so much for taking the time. But this is what I'm talking about, you guys. I love fresh new ideas. I think doing things the same old way is not always going to be beneficial. We have to grow. We have to evolve. And I think that was pretty much the theme of this conversation. So remember, follow us at lbpost.com. Jason Ruiz is your go-to guy for all things political, everything that's going on in the political arena. So make sure you follow us. Make sure you make an educated and an informed vote in March. It's very important. Like Gerrie said, our local government is what impacts us the most. So make sure you're making an informed vote. Follow your candidates. Learn everybody. We have a Compare Your Candidate on our site. I have a bunch of interviews as well on YouTube. Check those out. And remember, you have to speak a word, make it a good one, and we'll see you next time.
So sit down, listen.